We've got all the news and notes that you need to know following the Rams' second joint practice session with the Raiders, storylines and players that you need to be watching for in the Rams' second preseason game of the year, and a former Rams coach isn't very high on the 2023 Rams. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your two-time Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to the Locked On Rams YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button. Trying to get to 8,000 subscribers before the season begins, and let us know which Rams players do you think need to have a big preseason game to make the 53-man roster? Which storylines are you most looking forward to? Let us know. My name is Doug McCain. My friends call me D-Mac. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DMac_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade. The Lakers for SI, the Dodgers for Dodgers Nation, now the Rams for Locked On. And today I will be flying solo. Mr. Travis Rogers, the People's Champ, is out today, but we've got a jam-packed show for you. Late in our third segment, a former Rams coach is not very high on the 2023 Rams. In our second segment, what storylines you need to be looking for in the Rams' second preseason game of the year against the Raiders at SoFi Stadium? Which players are on the bubble? Which players should you be watching for? That's coming up in our second segment. But today we begin with news and notes and everything you need to know from the Rams' second joint practice session with the Raiders. But first, this episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your jobs for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So there was a fight between the Rams and the Raiders, and a football practice broke out. Yesterday, the Rams and Raiders held their second joint practice session at the Rams training facility in Thousand Oaks, and it got a little heated early. Aaron Donald, he was back from his rest day on Wednesday, and to no one's surprise, he got into it early. Jordan Rodriguez, the Athletic, reported that Donald flattened Raiders guard Netane Moody and drove him into the ground on the first rep of the day. Things got heated. There was a little mix-up, and Aaron Donald said after, "It's football, man. Honestly, every joint practice I've ever been a part of, there's always a fight. The way things happened yesterday, how physical it was, I was pretty sure was going to come back and be a lot of BS." So there you have it. We know what was coming, and thankfully, it actually served a purpose. It wasn't just a mix-up for the sake of being a mix-up. We know it happens at every training camp, but I think it lit a fire under this defensive line because Byron Young, he had a much better day. He beat offensive tackle Colton Miller twice during the one-on-one sessions. Deshaun Johnson, he had a better day. He won his rep on a bull rush. So that's definitely an encouraging development because the Rams are going to need these young players to emerge. They're going to need to turn that light on quick. You can't have the dimmer switch, right? The light just has to turn on. These young guys have to figure it out early, especially when you look at the competition, especially when you look at opening up on the road against the Seattle Seahawks, opening up at home against the 49ers. You got the Eagles, you got the Bengals, you got the Colts. It could be tough sledding if this defensive line doesn't figure things out early. And I think playing alongside Aaron Donald, that's going to allow them to see those one-on-ones, to give themselves the best chance of having success. And I think he also models the way, like Sean McVay likes to say. So great to see the defensive line having a better day. And then the second thing you need to know from the joint practice sessions is that Matthew Stafford looks great. Matthew Stafford picked apart this Raiders secondary for the second consecutive day. He looks healthy. He's making all the throws. He's not on a pitch count. Levi Damien, who covers the Raiders for USA Today, he tweeted out, Matt Stafford out here making a bunch of, quote, "there's no defense for a perfect passes." So that tells you everything you need to know. And the most important thing for me is that he's developing that chemistry and rapport with Tutu Atwell, with Puka Nacua. He already has that with Cooper Kupp. We know that. He has more chemistry than Walter White in Breaking Bad with Cooper Kupp. He doesn't need to establish that. We know what they were able to accomplish in 2021 when Kupp won won the Triple Crown, when Matthew Stafford was one of the elite quarterbacks in the game. Let's not forget that in 2021, Stafford threw for 4,486 yards and 4 touchdowns. Then in the postseason, he threw for 1,188 yards and 9 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions and led them to a game-winning drive in the Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford is still an elite quarterback when healthy. As long as he has the requisite weapons, as long as he has an offensive line that can protect him, I expect him to have a big season. I think the Matthew Stafford bounce-back season, the revenge tour, is going to be absolutely delicious. And now the third thing you need to know about the Rams' second joint practice session with the Raiders is that right tackle Rob Havenstein left practice during 11-on-11s with what Sean McVay's calling a neck stinger. McVay told reporters after practice that Havenstein is okay, and the early assessment is that it is a neck stinger. So hopefully this is a lot of nothing. We know that Rob Havenstein has been a rock for this offensive line for quite some time, ever since he was drafted last year. Even with all the injuries, you can still count on big Rob Havenstein. I think on top of everything else, you need that veteran leadership. That's going to be so important with so much youth and experience along this O-line. But the next big question was, how did Logan Bruss perform? Because Logan Bruss, of course, he's a backup at the right tackle position. He dealt with his own finger injury during practice. It was reported that his fingers were pointed the opposite direction. They put it back in place. He got taped up, and he went back out there. And he did well in run plays. He did struggle in pass protection. So for him, it's a work in progress. He needs to get healthy. I think he's still in rehab mode, trying to get his body physically where it was before the injury. But Sean McVay said about Logan Bruss after practice, I think he's getting more comfortable. We're kind of settling him in at the right tackle spot. You're going against one of the premier players in this league. Think there are some things where he's continuing to gain confidence. Think there's certain things that he has done at a high level, and there's things where we want to continue to see more consistency. So my takeaway from that is, one, they're not giving up on Logan Bruss. They're not calling him Logan Bust, right? They want to see what they can get out of him. He clearly does some things that they feel are at a high level. So I think that they're still trying to develop him. So I think, one, they're not giving up on him, and two, he's firmly there at that right tackle spot, and I think that's where he's much more comfortable. And then the fourth thing you need to know about the Rams' second joint practice session with the Raiders is that the battle for the center spot is still very much up in the air. It's very unclear who's going to win that starting job. Coleman Shelton, he was said to have a very solid day. He was strong. He was physical. He held up in pass protection. And then there was a Raiders reporter for Sports Illustrated that tweeted out, Rams center Brian Allen is a beast. Only Ram didn't lose a rep. He's a beast. Only problem with that is Jordan Rodriguez of The Athletic. She reported Rams center Brian Allen did not practice for unspecified reasons, but was present, indicating a scheduled rest day. So I'm going to lean towards Jordan Rodriguez of The Athletic. She does such a fantastic job. She's also the Rams reporter, and I think I'm going to go with that. So Brian Allen, it looks like he was out, and maybe that was Coleman Shelton. So if that's the case, maybe he does have the inside track, because last year Brian Allen struggled. 2021, he was really good. In the offseason, Brian Allen got his deal restructured to save $3.2 million. He took a $3 million pay cut for $3 million in guarantees. And Coleman Shelton, they signed him to a 2-year, $8.75 million deal. And 2024 becomes a void year if Shelton plays 55% of the snaps in 2023. So basically, if he's a starter, he'll become a free agent. So it's very interesting to see what's going to transpire, who's going to win that position, because I think Coleman Shelton, he of course has that upside, can also play right guard. I think Ankram's going to probably win that job at the right guard spot. And then Brian Allen, if he doesn't win that center spot, then he just becomes a depth piece at center, because he doesn't have that positional versatility. You don't get the optionality with him that you get with Coleman Shelton. But I think that it's still TBD right now at this center spot. I have heard some good things about Coleman Shelton. We'll see if Brian Allen can return to the player that he was in 2021. We did a great job along this offensive line, but that's something to watch moving forward. But coming up in our next segment, which players should you be watching for in the Rams' second preseason game of the year? Who needs to step up and have a big game to increase their chances of making this 53-man roster? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. But first, let's talk about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. The football season is about to start. Maybe you're gearing up for the start of your new year, and hiring people is all about finding the right candidates, knowing where to look for the right candidates. That's why LinkedIn Jobs is so important. It's so easy to create job posts for free on LinkedIn Jobs. You just add your purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And another reminder, if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to the Locked On Rams YouTube channel. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. If you really want to support the channel, hit that like button and let us know which Rams players are you most looking forward to seeing in the Rams' second preseason game. And also want to send a shout out to our everyday listeners. We appreciate you. You guys can be an everyday listener too. Join the club. Membership is free, and you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. But here in our second segment, we've got a list of players that you need to be watching for in the Rams' second preseason game against the Raiders at home at SoFi Stadium tomorrow. The first one being Lance McCutcheon. Now, Lance McCutcheon, I think, is starting to lose his spot. I think this is someone who's most definitely on the bubble, a guy that last year he was phenomenal. He was the Rams preseason MVP. He looked like he was going to be a key contributor. Only problem is when the regular season started, he wasn't the same guy. So you always have to have your preseason goggles on, right? When you look at these guys in the preseason, it's a very different experience. When you hear about how well they play during training camp, during practice sessions, always keep those goggles on, knowing that you're comparing the player to his own teammates, right? To the guys that are currently on their roster, not other teams, right? So that's something you have to always consider. But Lance McCutcheon, of course, undrafted rookie out of Montana State. He was great last year. He had a great chemistry with Bryce Perkins. He opened eyes to the point where he earned a spot on that 53-man roster. Then when he did get his opportunity, didn't do a great job of creating separation. And on top of that, you have young players that are stepping up. Tutu Atwell, I think, is close to turning a corner. I think Puka Nacua is absolutely going to carve out a role for this team. You've also added veterans in DeMarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson, both who have impressed during training camp and in the first preseason game. So if you look at his performance in the first preseason game, McCutcheon had 36 snaps. He was targeted 6 times. He made 2 catches for 28 yards, also had 1 drop. Didn't do a great job of getting separation. Didn't look too thrilled with his performance after the game on the sideline as well. So be sure to keep your eyes on Lance McCutcheon. See if he makes some big catches. See if he gets separation. See if they target him and how many snaps he gets, because he's going to have himself a nice showing if he wants to prove to these coaches that he deserves a spot on this roster. And then another guy I think you should be looking for is cornerback Jordan Jones. The undrafted rookie out of Rhode Island was impressive in the Rams preseason opener. He was aggressive. He was physical. He was always around the ball in coverage opportunities. He tied for the team lead with 5 tackles. And if he continues to make progress and impress coaches, it's going to be a very difficult decision. Do you find a way to get him on this roster? Because you can see the upside with him. I love the fact that he's so physical. I think that what we saw last year with the Rams constantly being burned in the quick game, to have aggressive cornerbacks that aren't afraid to go up there and make tackles, I think is going to be key. But can he crack the 53-man? Because I think right now, if you look at the cornerback depth chart, I think you got Kobe Durant, Akello Witherspoon, Darion Kendrick, Robert Rochelle, and Trey Tomlinson. So that's 5 guys that I think are pretty much locked to make it at this point. Can you find another position where you say, okay, we can take one off and you put him on here. That's something that you consider. But Jordan Jones was very impressive. He continues to play well. He's going to put himself in the conversation. I think his name's already in the hat. The only question is, do they think he's good enough to earn a spot on this roster? But if he plays well, it's going to continue to build some momentum in that direction. And then, of course, there's Stetson Bennett. After the Rams' first preseason game, all the buzz was about Bennett. We know he's got the juice. We know that he is most likely going to win the job as the Rams' backup quarterback. I think that's been a foregone conclusion for quite some time now. I've said it for months now that the Rams were going to keep two quarterbacks, a QB1 in Stafford and a QB2 in Bennett. Then you use that additional roster spot to provide depth at another position of need. So I think that's always been the plan. But I think what you need to look for from Bennett in the second game is, one, how does he look early? Because he even said it himself. He was a little nervous to start the game. He had some difficult throws. He made some throws that could have been picked off, could have thrown a pick six, made some panic throws across his body. But then once he got settled, he was poised. He was composed. He was going through his progressions. So how does he develop? Does he continue to make strides? Because if you look at his performance during the joint practice sessions, he took some sacks. By the way, sacks in air quotes, of course, because they don't actually get sacked. But he did take some sacks, but he also hit Tyler Johnson for a big slant that was similar to the one that we saw during the preseason game. He misfired on some throws, but he also hit DeMarcus Robinson on a really nice throw as well. So I think you're going to get the ups and downs from Bennett early, but you look at the upside, you look at his ability to break the pocket, his ability to hit from the pocket as well, extend plays, get yards on the ground. So I'm very excited to see what he's able to do in his second game, because in his first stint, his first taste of NFL action, he went 17 for 29 for 191 yards and a touchdown. He led the Rams on that 16-play drive. He hit Nakua in the end zone, and that was with pretty much the entire game of action. I mean, he only missed that first quarter. He comes in there early in the second, plays almost 3 quarters, and he was very productive. So I'm very interested to see how he builds on that from game 1 to game 2. And then the next guy that I'm intrigued by and excited to watch on Saturday is edge rusher Keir Thomas, because Thomas showed out in the Rams preseason opener. He led the team with 1.5 sacks. He was tied for the team lead in tackles with 5. He led the team in overall snaps. So he got his opportunity and he made the most of it. And if you look at the edge rusher position right now, they're young, they're inexperienced, they're thin, and I think you got 5 guys they're going to go with. I think you got Byron Young, Michael Hoyt, you got Daniel Hardy, Nick Hampton, and Keir Thomas. So outside of the top 2 right there, and Michael Hoyt, who had success last year after he went from the interior line to the edge rusher spot, there are some questions if he can truly transition there when you consider his size still listed at over 300 pounds. He's going to struggle at times trying to make plays against faster receivers and running backs that can juke him and in those situations, but he's someone that also is very strong, and he's just almost an anomaly there, and I think he's going to get his opportunity. Byron Young, we know that they want to see him be that guy. They drafted him because he had the physical tools and all the things that you want to see from an elite edge rusher as far as speed and quickness and physicality. He also played 20 straight snaps in the preseason opener. They were trying to get his stamina up, and I think they're still very high on him, and I think that it's his role to lose. I also think, too, that a veteran edge rusher, if he becomes available and they can get him at the right price, like they did with Akello Witherspoon, I think they will strongly consider that. But as far as Keir Thomas, look for him because he has some serious juice out there. I love the way he brings that fire and passion. I think that Sean McVay was very high on him as well. You heard his comments about him after the game, how happy he was with his success. But he's someone that I think could provide some really nice depth for this team. And then there's the special teams. Can the special teams have a better showing? Can they bounce back from a rough first game? Tanner Brown, he missed a kick from 46. He bounced back. He made a kick from 39. It was the first time he had missed a kick inside the 50 during training camp. He definitely has the leg, but can he handle it at this level? That's always the big question. Nerves are always a factor. We know the goalpost is the same size, it's the same dimensions, but it's very different in the NFL versus college. And I think you're going to see this team, if he can't get it done, they will look to add a kicker. Let's not forget, they went through 5 kickers before they found Matt Gay in 2020. So sometimes that's what it takes. There's always going to be veteran kickers that become available. There will be guys on the waiver wire that you can expect explore. So we'll see what happens from that standpoint, but I think you're going to need to see a much better showing from the overall group, too. Ethan Evans, he flashed that leg, some booming punts there, but he outkicked his coverage, and then they allowed the punt return for a touchdown. Daniel Hardy over-pursued on that tackle there on the return. So, yeah, when you have 3 rookies that are leading your special teams units, they're going to have to prove it, and we're going to have to see. So, the same token, hopefully that first game, you can kind of flush it. You got it under your belt. You know what it's like. You know all the pregame jitters and what you're experiencing. Remember, if you're nervous, that just means you care, right? But I'm expecting a much better performance from the Rams special teams in their second preseason game. And if they don't, if they continue to struggle, I think that'll increase the chances that the Rams ultimately go out there and explore the idea of adding some veterans. But I think they're going to turn things around. Now, coming up in our next segment, a former Rams coach is not high on the 2023 Rams. Hear what he has to say next on Locked On Rams. And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And another reminder, if you haven't yet, do us a favor, join the party and subscribe to the Locked On Rams YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button, and let us know. What is your reaction to Mike Martz's comments on the 2023 Rams? Because here in our final segment, the former Rams head coach said that if the Rams finish with a 500 record, that it would be a great year. Martz said if the Rams can finish the year with a 500 record, it would be a great year for them. But I do like this team. They're one of the better coached teams in the league. They're going to find out just how well McVay can motivate his guys, get them up to speed, and make that transition back to a winning culture. Some really young players will be put in a spot where they need to play at a high level. When you do that, there are both good and bad surprises, but there's not going to be a lot of consistency to it, which will hurt Los Angeles' ability to win games. So my reaction to that is there's a lot of truth there, a lot of truth bombs there. The reality is young, inexperienced players, especially rookies, they're the great unknown. They're the mystery box, and until you open that box and see what's inside and see how they perform at this level, you just don't know. They're going to need guys like Byron Young, guys like Kobe Turner, guys like Trey Tomlinson to step up. I think offensively, Steve Avila is the big one for me. He's going to be the starting left guard. Of course, Puka Nacua, he can have a big impact as well. Even Zach Evans could have an impact as well out of the running backs position. But to me, it's more focused on defensively. Can the second-year players, can Kobe Durant be that guy, right? So we'll find out early on how this defense is going to fare. But look, it could take some time. The light's not going to go on right away for all these guys. So he does bring up a valid point there. So I don't disagree with him on that. Now, he also gone to say it's going to be hard for Los Angeles to compete this season with all the young players they've been forced to bring in for financial reasons. Though the Rams recently picked up veteran cornerback Akella Witherspoon and will return star Aaron Donald, this could still end up looking something like a college all-star team. Wow, that kind of seems like a little bit of a shot. And I think this team 100% would win the national championship. I think they would beat Michigan or Ohio State or whoever they would play. But no, there's still a lot of talent on this defensive side of the ball. You still have Aaron Donald, who, as Jimmy Garoppolo called a few days ago, is an all-world talent, right? He's so disruptive. He opens things up for his teammates along that line. You also brought back John Johnson III. He's another veteran. I still think there's a chance they do sign a veteran edge rusher. And I think, too, Ernest Jones is someone who's going to step up and have a big impact this year, too. He added a lot of muscle. He's the green dot guy. So that's something that you can build upon as well. So there is talent and potential. The big question is how quickly can they gel? How quickly can they figure things out? As far as will this be a successful season if they go 500? Well, first and foremost, you can't go 500 because it's a 17-game season. But I digress on that point. I think what he means is hovering around 500. Is an 8-9 season a successful season? I think, look, this is a successful season if, one, primarily Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, and Cooper Kupp all stay healthy. If they stay healthy and you can take that momentum into 2024 where they're going to be in a much better position to sign free agents, they'll have their first-round pick back. You're going to have a war chest of money to go out there and sign some big free agents. Les Snead has already talked about this Rams organization going back to being aggressive. This year was the necessary evil. They had to take a couple steps back to take a big step forward in 2024. And as long as those three guys stay healthy and you have those core pieces, those weight-bearing walls, as Les Snead likes to call them, then I think that you can move forward and feel good about it. But if any of those guys suffer an injury, then you're starting to look like maybe we're in a rebuild, right? Maybe we're going to have to make some tough decisions. But as long as they stay healthy, I still think you could win another Super Bowl and make another deep run with this core. I also would see this team as a success if they hit on a lot of these young players. If Byron Young works out, if Avalo works out, if Trey Tomlinson works out, if Puka Nacua and Zach Evans, if you hit on 5 of these rookies, when you consider you drafted 14 players, that to me would be a win because you are getting a little bit of a reset, a little bit of a transition. They're calling it a remodel. So to me, it's about finding these players that can contribute for years to come. Do you have some dudes? Because you're not going to hit on all these guys. The success rate, especially on lesser round draft picks, especially the edge rusher position, isn't great. But if Byron Young looks like someone who's going to be a multi-year starter, who's going to be an impact defender, and you found him when you did in the 3rd round, that to me is going to go far, and it's going to really tell me what I need to see from this team. I need to see young players emerge. I need to see rookies that look like they have potential. I'm looking for glimpses of greatness. Also some signs of solid as well. So we'll see what happens. As far as wins and losses, you're in Los Angeles, right? You still have 3 superstar players in Stafford, Kupp, and Donald. I think anything less than a playoff appearance is going to be seen as a disappointment as far as this organization goes because of how competitive they are. Now, the reality is we know they won a Super Bowl in 2021. There's 12 organizations that have never won a Lombardi trophy. So we still have to trust this organization and what they've built. And I think, too, it's a very difficult division with the Seattle Seahawks, with the San Francisco 49ers. But if the defense figures things out, I'm confident this offense is going to score points. If you can guarantee me 16, 17 games from Stafford, Kupp, and Donald, you still have the coaching advantage. Don't underestimate that. I think the addition of Mike LaFleur, they're going to help reestablish the run. I think Cam Akers is poised to have a breakout season. Don't sleep on the Rams. I think the big takeaway for me is that of any Rams season that I've experienced, the wider range of outcomes, the range of outcomes is so significant. This is a team that could make the playoffs and be a surprise team, or they could end up with a high draft pick if guys get injured, right? So I think that's what makes it such a fascinating and intriguing season for me, is in going so many different directions. But the reality is you lose a lot of veterans. You lose Ramsey, Wagner, Floyd, Gaines, Robinson. They're all gone. You replace them with a bunch of rookies and inexperienced guys. So just from a logic standpoint, there is going to be a drop-off that you just have to hope that these guys are going to figure things out and have that light turn on earlier than later. But I still think this team has the potential to make the playoffs. I'm very confident that Matthew Stafford is going to have a big bounce-back year. Just guarantee me health, and I'll get you more than 5 wins. This team, despite a historically bad offensive line, more injuries than you could count, absolutely decimated. It was a season of Squid Game for this offensive line. They still managed to win 5 games. You're telling me I can't get 3 more? Tell me I can't get 4 more? Can't tell me I can't get 8 or 9 wins with a healthy Stafford, Donald, and Kupp? I think it's very possible. I think a re-energized and reinvigorated Sean McVay makes a big difference as well. And you don't have to worry about a Super Bowl hangover too. So I like this Rams team. I think they're playing with house money this year. I truly believe that. I think that it's a win-win. If you make the playoffs, great, and then you can add some free agents, and that means you hit on some of these rookies and young players. If they don't, you end up with a high draft pick. Maybe go out there and get a left tackle, or you get a premier player. So I'm still very excited about the possibility for this season, but hey, Mike Martz, don't count out this Rams team. I'm telling you, they still have some potential, and they're out to prove people wrong this year. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And until next time, whose house is Locked On Rams house?